I'd like to open the Policy Committee meeting. This is Thursday, July 28th, 2016, and it's 5 o'clock, and it's been moved to the Nashua North building instead of the school administration building like it's on our agenda. Could you take the roll?
Sure. Mr. Antarver is absent. Clancy.
I'm here.
Mr. Kaufman here. Mr. Farrington
Here.
is here. Also here, Mr. Frederickson.
Okay. We're going to do a little bit different on this agenda. EEAA, I believe we're waiting for more information. I don't think anything is changing, so we're not going to be hitting on that at all. We're going to start with ILBAT and ILBAT-R. And I'll make a motion to approve those to start the conversation, if I can get a second.
Second.
Okay. The language is pretty simple for ILBAT. Teachers may determine the most appropriate grading system for their pupils, either competency-based grading system as specified in ILBAA and ILBAA-R, or a traditional grading system as specified in this policy, ILBAT and ILBAT-R. No teacher shall be adversely treated or evaluated based upon their determination of the most appropriate grading system for their pupils. ILBAT just gives a streamlined version of the grading system, similar to its complementary one, ILBAA-R. It does authorize an incomplete to be restored to the grading chart. An incomplete given at the discretion of the teacher of record allows the student the opportunity to work satisfactorily complete coursework after the end of a grading period. It restores the quarterly grades on a report card. A semester grade shall be the weighted average of 2 quarterly grades and a final exam or a project designated by the teacher of record. It also maintains C- as the passing grade. It's pretty similar. It's got the A+ all the way down to the C-. Oh, I have a little piece of paper here. Okay, I think this policy is needed because currently we've got 84% of our community that's opposed to the competency-based grading and 54% of our teachers. None of our teachers have come publicly to discuss that. And I think if we have a level playing field where they have the option, a dual grading system, they could come and talk about the pros and cons. And since this is a new and experimental system, I think discussing the pros and cons would be very constructive to the board. At least I would welcome that. And the competency-based grading is not mandatory, although the instructing with competencies and designating competencies per course is mandated by ED 306. Is there any other comments?
Ms. Lancy?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I too feel that a wider discussion at the district level, at the board level, is necessary for the same reasons that you've just described. And bringing forward these proposals ensures that we have a full discussion at the board.
Any more discussion from the board, from the committee? We'll have public comment is not on the agenda. We had it twice the last meeting, and we're continuing where we were, and we will have it after we vote, and there will be another vote at the full board. But we're trying to move through the language of the policies themselves. Is there any more discussion from the committee? And we'll call the roll.
Oh. We've already articulated, the school district has already articulated the difficulties we'll have about implementing it, so we'll articulate that more at the full board which I think is what you're
Right.
going to do, right?
I don't think that we can discuss the functionality because we've essentially placed a gag order on personnel. I'm not allowed to ask administrators anything about the functionality of the machine till we get a vote of the full board. So at that
Okay,
point,
that's
then maybe it'll be germane, but until then, we're just going to discuss the policies themselves. So there's no further discussion. Take the roll.
Okay.
And this is on the two policies, ILBAT and ILBAT-R.
Okay, let me get to the right section here. Okay, so you made the motion originally that I seconded. And today is the 28th. Okay, so for the committee role, I guess Ms. Van Twyver's here, so we don't
She's
ask.
absent.
So Ms. Hensy,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman, yes. Mr. Farrington?
No.
No.
Okay.
2-0. Pass. Okay.
Next on the agenda, there's 4 auxiliary policies in your packet. There's really no changes other than a link to the new policy and the old policy on grading. So I think it's highlighted in red. They're pretty self-explanatory. There's JJJA and JJJA-R, IHBI, and IHBH. And each one of them simply has a link to the new procedure, so it links it in to the old procedures, so it's not a substantial change. So I will move that we pass those. I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
I do have one question.
Certainly.
Is this sufficient, is the linkage, is the reference by link sufficient, or should it also be accommodated at the end of, typically on a lot of these policies, we have associated documents and things like that, or I'm just wondering if this is in other words, associated policies are oftentimes referred to,
Right.
and they're sometimes collected at the bottom of a page. So did you want to also add that as well?
There's legal references, but I think if they refer to the policy, they'll get the same legal reference. So it'll add more ink, but I don't think it adds any substance.
Okay. Just oftentimes, when people review these things, they come to the bottom of the document, and they see, is there any other documents that are related? And sometimes they list policies. They might have several policies listed,
Yeah.
just to make it easier perhaps for the reader, is what I'm
Well,
asking.
since we're not going into detail and just referring to the mnemonics, you could put in the teacher's contract 8-4, but we've only got 4 letters in there. It's not like we're substantiating
Okay.
any verbiage in these 4.
Just wanted to ask.
Is there any other discussion? Roll call.
Could you clarify the motion, please?
The motion is to pass the 4 associated policies that are on the agenda, JJJA, JJJA-R, IHBI, IHBH. Each one of them just has a link to one of the new policies as an alternative. There's no change to the policy otherwise.
Thank you.
Okay, so roll call vote. Ms. O'Hensy,
Yes?
Mr. Kaufman, yes. Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There's one more addition. Mr. Sherman brought to our attention 2 other policies that we should include. I've got copies of the policies here if you want to pass the 2 around at your leisure. We're not going to change the policies. We're just going to add language to them. So again, they know that they can go either one way or the other way in terms of grading, and it just so that nobody gets caught flat-footed, not understanding that there are 2 options.
Excuse me, do you just,
Those are 10 copies each.
Oh, they're
of
10
two-
each, and here
Of
are-
two
here are
different,
full
of two different policies, so they would need one sheet each. And the audience is welcome to have copies. They're just, it's ILBAA, which is High School Competency Assessments, and ILBAA-R, which is Competency Assessment Regulations and Procedures. And there's no proposed changes marked on this. What I would recommend is taking the language from ILBAT, which is 2 sentences, and just stick that in as a paragraph in each so that they know that there's an existence of an alternative. With the ILBAA-R, that could be stuck right in at the top. And the language would be, teachers may determine the most appropriate grading system for their pupils, ... ending with no teacher shall be adversely treated or evaluated. And it refers to the ILBAA and ILBAT as alternatives. It's just taking the language from that policy that we just recommended and sticking it in at the top of the policy ILBAA-R that Mr. Sherman said might be confusing. With ILBAA, they also have alternatives in here, alternative credit options, extended learning opportunities. Right after that, we could put the new language in there to have this as another option. So that would be one paragraph from the end.
if I may.
Sure.
Consistent with what we've done at other committee meetings, it's, I think, best if we get these marked up and presented so that we have the full text in front of us. I mean,
We could do that for the full board meeting, but I think you pretty much,
I agree, but I'm just saying that we need to edit these out completely.
we could leave a copy for Jackie so that she knows where to put it.
Yes, I intended, I was trying to write instructions for her.
Okay, so on one of them, you just put those 2 sentences at the top, and the other one, the next to last paragraph, you insert the language.
And from which policy was that?
ILBAA, you take the ILBAT language
ILBAT, okay.
for both of them, ILBAA-R, and that one goes at the top, and the other one goes next to the bottom where you have it marked.
Okay. So,
That's,
let me
yes,
see if this
that's
is
right,
your intent.
right.
Okay.
It's just redundant, it's just making sure that no one gets lost when reading the policies.
Okay.
So I will move that we accept these 2, recommend these 2 policies as amended.
Okay.
Do you have a second?
Yes.
You'll second?
Yes.
Okay, roll call?
Yes. Mr. Farrington,
No.
Mrs. Olensi,
Yes.
and Mr. Kaufman, yes.
Okay, 2 to 1. Okay, so that moves on. The next, if we want to do public comment at this point on these policies? Starting with people that haven't spoken, that'd be great if they come down. You can either sit, probably on one of the
You have to
sides.
suspend the rules, right?
Oh, well, we didn't last time, but would you like to, Mr. Farrington?
Yeah, before we do that, I just, in fairness, in response to your statement about something about a gag order, I think that in fairness, I think we need to acknowledge that we do actually have in our policies board member ethics. And as was mentioned at the last meeting, number 10 says that each board member will recognize that final board actions will be supported by all members of the board. Take no private action that will compromise the board or administration, and refrain from private actions which undermine or compromise official board action. I think, and my view is, private action which would compromise the administration would be going and trying to ask our administrators to find a way to undermine the decision that was made by the board, I believe, in early June when the 4-4 tie vote. And so I think it's not necessarily a gag order. It's those nasty board member ethics that are really getting in your way. But just another view, just to present
Thank you.
another view.
I looked at it as trying to get information and being obstructed, but I guess that's two different perspectives of the same issue. Could we have our first speaker? Come down and sit on a chair, make yourself comfortable.
Either
Right or
side.
left, and make sure you press it so the little green button lights up. Name and address would be welcome.
Tracy Pappas, 12 Sport Terrace. I would like to thank this committee for bringing this back up. I think in government that process is really important. And continuously, we've had surveys, and it's quite obvious that the majority of teachers don't like this grading. Unfortunately, they can't come in and speak against it because I think fear of intimidation, an administration that has just taken on the attitude that we're going to do this hella high water. I just had a son graduate from Nashua North, and I am so thankful he didn't have what I can only call a crazy-looking report card until he had already been accepted to the school of his choice. Many parents are very discouraged that the school board, a majority just seems to do this to parents and to students. And again, I'm not going to say to the teachers because I think what's interesting is that I did notice that it's a lot of English teachers, social studies teachers, physical education teachers. I can't recall, or art teachers I can't recall ever hearing a foreign language teacher come in and speak in favor of this grading system because it is inconsistent with how we do block scheduling. And I'm feeling very frustrated that high school is when my kids take advantage of the public school system. And I'm very disappointed that we don't do what other districts have done. What other districts do is have a day one and day two. When I suggest that, well, because of the few kids that have automotive or automotive, cosmetology, other items, we don't listen. Hopkinton School had block scheduling. They did away with it totally. Bedford had it. Merrimack had it. They listened to their parents and their students and their teachers, and they went to modified block. I feel as if once we make a decision here in Nashua, oops, we're not touching it again, ever again. And a good example with this grading system, we couldn't do anything during the school year because it was school year, and now we can't do anything because it's the summer. This is my son's future. I don't want to crush his dreams. I don't want him to be collateral damage because he has this crazy-looking report card. I've seen other report cards from districts who do this type of grading, and they're normal report cards that an individual can tell what the grade is. A buddy of mine joked, and we, again, considered ourselves lucky because both of our boys got into the college of their choice. They didn't have to, they did not have to be stuck with this reporting system. And he just laughed because he just asked his son, so, like, did you pass? What did you get for a grade? And it's very clear that board members rather do their work and not listen to the public because they know more. And I think it's disgusting because when I'm on a board, when public comment comes up, I pay attention to the public rather than to look at my computer or look at my phone. And I have really, I have found that there are school board members that think they know everything, and I wish they'd resign. I would like to know a show of hands what school board members have actually seen what these report cards look like. You've not seen it? So one? Well, I think that tells it all. And again, I think that it's absolutely stunning that not a single teacher who has an objection to the system has been able to speak publicly. And again, government process is very important, and I think that this has really been a shame, and it's been a slap in the face to members of the public. The approach has been fire, ready, aim. The report cards reflect that approach. There are no dress rehearsals for high school, for the high school grades for people who want to get into college. I guess those of us who had children after 1998 are just going to be stuck. Again, I don't think our children should have to be collateral damage. And I think that we ought to have report cards that a college could understand. I don't know who came up with this, and if we don't have the capacity to have them look like normal report cards, I think that maybe we need to subcontract the work, because the way they look are ridiculous. And I suggest the two of you, if you have the opportunity, if they give you the information, I think every school board member should be able to see what these report cards look like, because they are extremely confusing. You know, on the upside, I thank the two committee members who are giving this one more shot. I'm an optimist, and I do think that there's so much division because one side doesn't compromise or listen to the other. And I think this is a perfect example of a compromise. And I really hope that parents are listened to, and I hope that parents come, because they have to understand that teachers who are opposed to this, if I were a teacher that would oppose to us, I wouldn't come and speak against it either. Because other people are doing their reviews, and they're depending upon that if they want to get if they wish to have another position or to be elevated into administration. And I also think it's interesting that only certain administrators have spoken to this. It's very clear that some have just remained silent, and I respect them for doing that. But I just think it's a shame that we can't have an honest conversation. I thank you again for this great compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak?
Excuse me, Tracy, what is your address, please?
12 Swart Terrace. Thank you.
Just push the green button and name and address first, please.
Alan Teft, 16 Autumn Glen Circle, Nashua. I'm here as a parent of an elementary student in Nashua, but I'm a science teacher at Nashua South for the last 4 years. Prior to that, I taught about 7 years in Massachusetts. I'm bring myself back to a few months ago when we had that 4-4 vote to not change the competency grading system. And I know there was a lot of public comment at that time. The overwhelming thing that I heard was, two things. One, we need to have some time to make this work. We don't need more change. All the changes that we had in the last year really did a great disservice to our students, administrators, teachers, because there was a lot that was trying to be done, okay? And also a lot of it was communication. I think we as school employees, board, administrators, whatever, I think we all kind of recognized that there was a lot of failure to communicate. Parents did not really understand what the grading system was trying to become, okay? We obviously, as teachers, I'm on the front line trying to communicate to my students what's happening, okay? Obviously, I didn't do a great job at that. I could not see the same view of my students' grades that they could, or that my parents could, and that made things really difficult for me. However, what we really need is to stick with this the changes that were initiated this past year, again, going with the thought that we don't need to change things again. I personally, and I'm not an IT person or anything like that, I'm a science teacher, okay? But I know that a lot of the software difficulties that we had last year, a lot of that was because of the grading scale change that was made in June. Teachers had kind of done their beta testing with a 1 to 4 scale, and then, okay, sure, it's the board's prerogative. And I know you folks were not members of the board at that time or anything like that, but changes were made in June to be implemented in August. And I think, again, I'm on the outside here, that seemed to make a lot of difficulty for the software vendors, for the IT people, things like that. Again, it made it difficult to communicate what grades were being earned and things like that. I felt like much of the first quarter was spent on grading system changes, trying to fix the overnight changes that were being made in July and August last year. Okay, so let me see. I did have some notes here. Let me see. Obviously, nobody called me to tell me to come down here or anything like that. The comments said that teachers are feeling pressured not to speak up. I haven't heard of that myself. But I know as a science teacher, we had started using competencies early on. We were kind of early adopters, as were the foreign language teachers. Let me see. But yeah, the main thing I wanted to get across was anything that's going to make communication with the parents more complicated and more difficult, I think is going to ruin the process. And first, I'd say if we really want to kill competencies, kill competency-based grading, then sure, make communication more difficult. Make the parents that have, okay, you've got 4 different teachers, and oh, these 2 use this grading system, and these 2 use this grading system, and how am I really going to understand that? It's going to be a lot harder for them. So consistency, letting teachers be consistent with what they're doing. I personally don't see the driving force for the change back to the old system. I've heard about more differentiation and things like that. I don't know if that's because of the 15 students or whatever that are so concerned about being number 1 in their class or whatever, about trying to get that last percentage or what, but I'm trying to do this for the entire school population as far as I'm concerned. More communication, more effective communication, make it simple to understand. That's what it's all about. And I think that is all for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Ellen, please spell your last name for me.
Teft, T-E-F-F-T.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Please come down.
Hi, my name is James Graham, and I live on 14 Iroquois Road. Before I really get started on this, I just want to tell you really the first 2 things I learned about teaching when I started in this district almost a decade ago. First is that patience is more important than anything else as a teacher. Secondly, there is nothing you can do that will ruin your relationship with a class and allow you to lose your authority than to constantly make changes in what you believe and what you do. There needs to be a consistency, and on top of that, it needs to see its way out. It needs to be able to follow through and show exactly why it was there in the first place. And that's why I'm here today. Since I've been here, we have talked about competency-based grading in some way, shape, or form, whether it was the wording of competencies or how exactly we would put them in place, or what exactly we would do on the report card to make it visible to everybody involved. And I thought the process, while long, was necessary to iron out all the difficulties that we were coming across, and that I think by the end eventually figured out. And to voice what was just said, we practiced this quite a bit for a few years, where a good portion of teachers piloted this using a 4-point scale in the old grade book on X2. Which was a single sheet. You could see all the grades in one spot. There was an average that immediately popped out, so you would know how you were doing. As a student, teachers would know how their students were doing. As a teacher, parents would know when they checked on the portal. Everything was visible and understandable. And then, in June, there was a change made, and we went from a 4-point scale to an 11-point scale. But more importantly than that, we switched the way X2 looked. And there were multiple different grade sheets that you would have to switch to and from in order to find out how a student was doing. And in some cases, you would have a student who had one average on one sheet and another average on another. And I'm not talking 2 different competency grades. I'm talking how it appeared on the main screen where I'm looking at all of their grade scores. And then if I clicked on a second one that showed what their averages were for each of the competencies, they would be different scores. You can imagine how frustrating that is as a teacher when you have a student ask you, how am I doing, and you have no idea what to tell them, because you can't even check X2. You actually have to go back in and try to figure out exactly what works best. On top of that, we were told we're not allowed to represent the 11-point scale numerically. So we used to use a 4-point scale where you could put a 4, a 3, a 2, or an IP, and then in between the 4 and the 3, you could have a 3.5, and you could have a 2.5 as well between the 3 and the 2. And it was very clear, and you could do the quick math if you needed to adjust in your head and let a student know exactly not only where they were, but where they could go. So we were told, let's switch to letters, and now we're completely trusting that this average of all of the competencies process done by X2 was going to work perfectly, and it didn't. Now, there were a lot of headaches this year because of that, but I think some other headaches came into play because there was such pushback on this. But it's important to understand that we shouldn't do things because they're easy. We should do things because they're right, and I think competencies and competency-based grading is the right way to go. There are many students I've had that try to work for that little fraction of a point, or tried to on the 100-point scale. It's a little harder to do that with competency-based gradings because it's rubric-based. It's very easy to manipulate your grade on a 100-point scale because all you're looking to do is just tweak points here and there. If you understand a topic, but maybe I can tweak it even higher even though it shows I'm already competent, but let me try to get even more competent even though I'm already there as a way of making up for the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing in this other topic. There are plenty of students that have done that, have gamed the system, and I worry when I pass them along to the next grade because that's really what it is, because they ended up just eking by even though I know and they know and everybody else who has seen them know that they're not competent. Now, I teach math, so we build quite a bit on what the previous year taught. And if you're sending a student that you know isn't competent to the next class because they've found a way to manipulate and to game the system using the 100-point scale, I think it's in the best interest of everybody involved, the teachers who want their grades to be consistent and fair, the students who really should show what they know and get by on the merits and not because they're able to tweak and manipulate things to make it work for them, and the parents who trust us, all of us, you included, with how their students are graded and what exactly that shows. Remember, a grade is not a reward for a job well done. It is an indicator on how well a student knows their subject. And I think this is missing that point. I appreciate that there has been some pushback from some members of the faculty and you're trying to accommodate them, but there's lots of things we change that send people kicking and screaming saying, you can't make me, and we do it anyway because we know it's right. We have block scheduling for that reason. So we have E-block for that reason. We have a lot of good things for that reason. And it's important to understand that we will never find a consensus. So really, if there's anything can take away from me here is that we must be patient and we must be consistent. And we shouldn't do this because it's easy. We should do it because it's right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that has anything to contribute? Okay, then we'll move on to the next order of business, the Ethics and Professional Conduct, BCA and GBEA, and the associated documents.
Fill my papers here.
So I believe Mr. Kaufman has spoken with the attorney again, and you'd like to present these.
Let me give you folks an update, and I apologize for not bringing the text of... There was some concern expressed by Mr. Bolton that a lot of discussion was going on in the email system that really ought to be done in public comment. So allow me to try and remember and summarize part of that conversation as it relates to these things. At the last meeting, I brought forth a proposal which reflected Mr. Bolton's opinion that the areas of policy that we have, both for the board, for the staff, because they're in different places for that reason, be replaced by a reference to the city ordinances that we spoke about last meeting. I followed up our last meeting with a conversation with Mr. Bolton. I know Ms. Van Twyver had reached out to him that same day, and he agreed that essentially what we have, and Mr. Conrad, I think, eloquently made the point that we have some very specific ethics-related provisions that they use in terms of evaluation of many different things. And Mr. Sherman spoke to one instance in the city ordinances that could conflict with contractual agreements. So what Mr. Bolton agreed to was essentially to maintain that which we have now. As part of that conversation, the email that I shared with Mr. Bolton went to Mr. Conrad, and essentially what we agreed to do was review these individual items within BCA, which is the school board member ethics, and then and then the professional ethics, which is the GBEA. We have specific itemized items to review each of those items to see if they're still appropriate, to see if any conflict with the city ordinances. But the intent is to retain them largely in their current form, which I believe was what Mr. Conrad was really asking us to do. Essentially, don't mess with what we've got. We need it, it works. But on Mr. Bolton's comment, please make sure that they don't conflict with what the city has. Okay? And that's where we are right now.
Excuse me, Howard. Just for the benefit of the public, we probably should reference him as Attorney Bolton so that people understand.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Mr. Bolton is the city attorney, and he's available for consultation on board matters. Thank you. Okay. So back earlier in this process, which started this whole ball rolling, was a proposal that I had made to add something specific to both the professional ethics, GBEA, and to the school board member ethics, BCA, policies. Since we got caught up in the whirlwind of seeking opinion from Mr. Bolton and then going back and forth twice, I think we're the third or fourth month into this, and because we never got as far as considering my original proposal. So what I would like to do, we had it was on the agenda, we discussed it, but it had been really rolled into all these other discussions about what was going to happen. And I don't want to lose sight of what my original proposal was, so
Okay.
this is what was originally handed out. And I think I do have a copy for you, Mr. Sherman. And Tina, probably give you. Actually, I only have the one remaining for myself, which I need right away. Okay. You might have it? It says proposals to update BCA and GBEA. It was very early on in our process. Anyway, the language that I wanted to include the same language in both places. Okay, the school board member ethics, BCA, has a numbered list of 1 through 11 items. My proposal is to add a number 12, and I'm not making it a motion yet because I just want to put it out. Oh, I guess I have to make a motion before you can discuss.
You should make a motion.
Okay, let me do it this way. I move that the following text be added to school member ethics BCA as number 12 and as letter I rather, in professional ethics GBEA. No board member of the the school board member, but withdraw my comment there, little textual changes. I'm sorry.
Do you want to do one policy
I'm
at a
going to do
time?
one at a time.
Then it'll be simpler.
Okay, so I move that policy BCA, school board member ethics, be amended to include number 12. No board member of the Nashua School District shall accept any gratuity, gift, or favor that might impair or appear to influence professional decisions or actions.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. So, if I may speak to it.
Please.
So that the intent was to have that added as an additional item to that numbered list. And I ask that we take action on that, make the recommendation that we move that forward. I just want to comment one thing, is we still have to go through this list so that we don't have conflicts with the city ordinances. Just want to point that out. We're still on the hook for Mr. Bolton's comments.
Mr. Farrington?
Yeah, I guess this is a little more specific, but if you look at BCA-R down near the bottom, there's a continuation of board member ethics or whatever. It says avoid being placed in a position of conflict of interest and refrain from using my board position for personal or partisan gain. That's similar that's kind of what you're talking about, only you're more specific in your motion about specific gratuities, gifts, or favors.
Yes.
So how would we still leave under your plan, would we still leave that in the BCA-R, -R?
Well, perhaps we can find a way.
You see what I mean?
Conflict
There's
of
a
interest is not
similarity.
integrated within, perhaps we can
Okay.
reword to include both and pull one and be more succinct.
Quite frankly, I don't understand enough about this to know why we have 11 ethical provisions, and then we have a supplemental that aren't numbered. They're just a random list of,
That's a great question. I wish Ms. Van Twyver over here, she might have a better insight. I just view this as part of what I call the inheritance tax of come into a board that's been established for a while. We unfortunately don't have always a history available.
It was last changed in 2008, so she might not have been involved in setting it up. My suggestion for simplicity is to assume, since we are under the National Revised Ordinance anyway, to make the reference, assume we're consistent. I haven't seen anything in here that, to me, would be inconsistent. So add the reference, add the point you're going to, number 12 in BCA. The -R one, it says avoid being placed in a position. I think that's the gray areas, whereas, where it's not a specific contribution, but you're in a position where you give the appearance of. I think both are beneficial to keep in there.
Well, that's why I say I think Howard's is much more specific.
Right.
But I would, there are some aspects to this, the dash R, that I wouldn't want to lose, so,
Right, I agree.
okay.
So, may I?
Certainly.
How about, in the interest of constructive use of time, just again, I'm sorry, it's not in the form of an emotion, of a motion, but if we could amend, given the current motion that I've proposed, and add in addition to the text that Mr. Bolton asked us to include, which is in red in the documents, and move that forward,
The
and
one that-
leaving, pretty much leaving everything else intact.
I assumed as much since we had that form in front of us. I assumed the changes that came, the red line, plus your new one for item 12.
Excuse me, with the stuff from Attorney Bolton you're talking about at the end of, I think this is dash
Yes, it's at the
R.
end of BCAR and.
It says all Nashua School District employees subject to the ethics
Red.
guidelines contained in.
Yes,
That's what
red.
you're talking about?
That's the red text we're talking about. I'm sorry, folks.
Okay.
Let me read that for the benefit of
Yeah.
everybody. So the following text I'm about to read was recommended by Mr. Attorney Bolton that it be included in our ethical-related policies. Its intent is to remind everybody that works at the school district that we are all city employees and we are subject to the ethical guidelines of the city as well. So this is the reference, this language will be proposed to be amended. All Nashua School District employees are subject to the ethics guidelines contained in Chapter 5, Administration of Government, Part 5, Conduct Regulations, Sections 593 through 5103 of the Nashua City Ordinances. For the convenience of district employees, a copy of these guidelines can be found on the district website. Now,
I believe last time we spoke that the administration would prefer a link instead of a link.
From the district.
A link, and then provide it.
I think it's a lot better.
A link to these guidelines will be.
Oh, then they just put colon and put it there.
Now, I haven't looked at these, but I would suspect that somewhere in there is an ethics rule that is very similar to what you're proposing.
Okay.
That I would suspect, I haven't read them.
I think it's good to have,
I'm not suggesting we
Yeah.
not put it in
Right.
ours,
I
because I
don't-
have another suggestion after this. but-
okay, I think it's good to put it in there. I think it's beneficial. And it's good for them to have our board policies. They can go on and look at
Yes.
the overall policies. But I think Mr. Sherman and Mr. Conrad both emphasize the need to keep what they've been working around for the past number of years.
And
Mr.
if
Barrington.
I could, somewhere in looking at these in another district or something, they had a note at the bottom of their board member ethics saying that a copy of these will be given to all board members at the beginning of each school year or something like that, just a reminder, and I thought that was kind of a,
I think that might be in another policy somewhere. That's the School Board Association. I think they have that
I've read it
recommendation.
somewhere, and it struck me as being, it's a nice reminder, especially if we can get to the point where everybody does it electronically, we don't have to waste the paper, but that's another subject for another day, right, Howard?
It is a subject for another day. I'm sympathetic, but I don't want to carry my heavy laptop with me wherever I go.
Okay.
So if I may amend my previous motion, Mr.
No,
You had your hand up.
no, that's okay. I just want to make sure I understand what you're talking about. So you want to leave all the red in, you want to add a link to the ordinances,
Yes.
correct? And then are you leaving the related documents on, or are you removing that at the bottom?
Oh, that's a good question, because if we provide a link, should we still relate to?
I was under the
I would say
impression you were-
yes. I would say, even though we're providing a link to it, I think it's a good idea to refer.
So you want to leave that on, all right?
Yeah, because it's a reference to a legal document. I think it should stay. That would be my opinion. I mean, I'm open to discussion. Do you have an opinion
There's a
on it?
typo on professional, it's PO, so
Oh,
it should be PR.
Got it.
In the last line of BCA. I don't know if it's on the other one. The other one's correct.
So, may I?
Certainly.
George, help me out procedurally here, because I know I'm treading on thin ice.
You can do anything you want as long as nobody objects, Howard.
Read it
Well,
through, read it through clearly, and then we'll take a vote on it.
Okay.
So we know
So-
what we're
I
voting on.
probably won't
we're-
object, so.
Okay, so what I would like to do is withdraw my motion that's currently on the floor, if that's okay with Ms.
Fine,
Hohensie.
and I'll pull
And
mine.
make a motion to include all the change, would encompass all the changes that be in one motion. That's what I'm going to try and do.
Okay, and I'll second that. You clarify what we're voting on, and then we'll get on to
Okay,
voting.
So I move that policy BCA be amended as follows. Item number 12 be added, the text of which is, no board member of the Nashua School District shall accept any gratuity, gift, or favor that might impair or appear to influence professional decisions or actions. Additionally, after number 12, but not numbered, would appear the text that's currently in the draft as read text. All Nashua School District employees are subject to the ethics guidelines contained in Chapter 5, Administration of Government, Part 5, Conduct Regulations, Sections 5-93 through 5-103 of the Nashua City Ordinances. New paragraph, for the convenience of district employees, a link to these guidelines can be found on the district website. That constitutes the complete text I'd like to have added to this.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, Doris. And then under related documents, continuing text, related documents, Nashua City Ordinances, Chapter 5, Conduct Regulations, School Board Member Ethics, BCA, BCAR, Board Member Conflict of Interest, BCB, Professional Ethics with a typo, GBEA, Conflict of Interest, 8214.5. Okay, thank you.
Duly seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Shall we have a roll call?
Okay.
Or would it be simpler just to all, yay and nay? You wouldn't have to, you have to write it down either way?
No, I'm going to trust that they can reconstruct it, and I'm going to include hard copies, documents to assist them.
But if we just vote, you don't have to take a roll call. Would that be easier for the clerk?
It's always easier for the clerk if we don't have
All
roll
those in
call.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? 3-0,
All right, let me-
or
Hold
it's
on.
unanimous, or
So that's the BCA.
CA.
Okay, motion. Okay, and that was for BCA. Okay. If I may, policy
Certainly.
GBEA.
Can I interrupt once? Do you want to just accept BCA-R as highlighted in red and blue and in our packet? Is that going to be something you're going to?
I have no change to that.
Okay, so we're throwing that out. Thank you. Continue.
But no, it has the, I'm sorry, folks. We probably want to include that only for consistency.
Okay, so
The other
should we
policy.
take a quick vote on that?
So-
You'd like to move to accept?
Move to accept BCA-R as amended in the handout, which includes, and I'll just read the text. This text would be added to the bottom of the existing document.
Same as the last one.
Which
red
is the
and
same text as in the last. All Nashua School District employees are subject to the ethics guidelines contained in Chapter 5, Administration of Government, Part 5, Conduct Regulations, Sections 593 through 5103 of the Nashua City Ordinances. For the convenience of district employees, a link to these guidelines Okay.
And else, you're done?
And then the related documents of Nashua City Ordinances, Chapter 5, et cetera, and then that would constitute the change.
And I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. That one's done. So now we're on GBA, EA, professional ethics again, but for educators.
Okay, so GBEA. The next one is BCB, wait a second,
I thought we were doing GBEA.
sorry.
You had I and J that you wanted included at the bottom.
Yes. I just got myself confused here.
Did you take mine?
No,
You've got-
I'm sorry, folks.
It's okay.
I thought we just did,
We did the dash R that went BCA dash R.
okay,
Because they were related, I thought we should bang them out together.
right. And the second vote?
Was BCA, the second vote was BCA dash R
Okay.
that you read.
Okay. All right, so, okay, so let's do GBEA. And I move to amend GBEA, the professional ethics policy, to add a letter J, which says, "No employee or contractor of the Nashua School District shall accept any gratuity, gift, or favor that might impair or appear to influence professional decisions or actions."
Would that be J or I?
Aye.
And then J, right?
I just asked because you said you referred to it as a J.
I'm sorry.
When you read it.
I thought, I'm sorry,
I'm just,
I appreciate the clarification, strictly letter I, and in fact, I was not going to propose the J.
Okay.
That's here.
okay,
I was going to just stop at I.
okay, that's fine. But when you said it, you said J.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I need editing tonight, I'm sorry, folks.
And that would include the red and the blue ink on the handout in our packet.
Yes, the amendments that were currently on the page, this just, would, in addition, add an I.
I will second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Mike's got a question.
Oh, yes.
When I was talking over with Dana over central office, she said because this was a G document, this has to go to the HR committee. Is that what the motion is, to send it to the HR committee?
Well, it has to go back to the
The
board,
board can send it to HR if they'd like.
Okay,
or they could approve it at the board.
okay, I'm just telling you, that's what she had said, it probably was gonna go back to the HR committee, that's why I didn't know.
Fine.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
BCB.
BCB would be next.
This right here, is that right?
So the next one is BCB, Board Member Conflict of Interest. For this particular,
Which one is it?
BCB,
Okay. Back up to school.
Boy Charlie Boy.
Okay.
And if anybody knows how the encoding of these letter classifications works, please inform the board immediately. Okay. So I move that policy BCB, Board Member Conflict of Interest, be amended as presented to the board in the handout, that the following text be added: all Nashua School District employees are subject to the ethics guidelines contained in Chapter 5. Administration of Government, Part 5, Conduct Regulations, Sections 593 through 103 of the Nashua City Ordinances. For the convenience of the district employees, a link or can be found. And then it has a reference for related documents, Nashua City Ordinances, Chapter 5, Conduct Regulations, School Board Ethics, BCA, BCAR, Board Member Conflict of Interest, BCB, Professional Ethics, GBEA, and Conflict of Interest, 8214.5.
I'll second that.
And
Mr.
just for my
Barrington?
own clarification, and maybe for the people listening, this is a continuation of the recommendation from Attorney Bolton.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
They actually want to put the link on there.
Aye.
Do that again.
Just
George?
for
Yeah.
clarification, you referenced the link. Is it in that second paragraph in the red for the convenience of district employees, a link of these guidelines? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we have to get, right, instead of a copy, a link, yes. Okay, that's BCB.
All those in favor of recommending BCB as amended?
Aye.
Say aye. Against? Passes.
Okay.
So the last one is our unnamed one, G, or 82.14-.5, Employee Conflict of Interest. So you have the same changes. Does anyone have a suggestion for a better mnemonic? Since we're going to letters, is there any recommendation for that?
If I just make comment, this is the old numerical system that was in place years ago. For our benefit, I think Tara offered a G prefix, if nothing else, suggesting where it might go. But that is merely a suggestion to your point about, do we just keep the old number or we try and rename it?
I think we should go G, and we can let Tara name it and christen it. We'll just vote on the text. Mr. Farrington?
I think it kind of goes to Howard's question from earlier. Who created this system and who owns the decoder ring to?
I don't have the
Look, I
decoder
mean-
ring.
This probably is based on School Board Association or somebody, some group that has that, and
It's also to make sure you don't have, we can pick 3 or 4 letters, but what if there's another policy out there that's identical letters, then we're
Exactly.
just
That's-
bumbled. So why don't we agree to go to the letter mnemonics and let Tara, in her wisdom, pick 3 or 4?
but how is she going to know that she's not picking the letters for some other policy?
Can I,
Mr. Koff?
You have a solution?
can I thread the needle?
Sure.
I think, I like the idea of coding it as a G, so it puts it in the correct section.
That's fine.
And for historical purposes, and since we really have no clue on what other mnemonic letters we could use, why don't we call it G82415?
No, how about,
G82214.
their letters or numbers, that would be a
Or
month.
what if we put left it as 8214.5 and add a G at the end of it?
Okay, what if we use COI for conflict of interest and put a G in front of it and hope for the best that there's no duplicate? So it will be policy GCOI. Do you feel like it's properly named?
You can call somebody at another school district who still has membership in the School Board Association and ask them to call the School Board Association.
No, we need,
We're
only look
severed,
at our
so-
own list to make sure we don't have the same mnemonics twice for 2 different policies. That's all that's really relevant. So
I like that one.
you want to take this and make that one change?
Put back the
Instead of a
link.
copy, you want a link to?
Yes.
Otherwise, you want to make a motion to accept as put in the packet, I believe?
Motion to accept as amended, 8214.5 as follows, renaming the policy GCOI and adding the amended text as presented. I think it's the same
Change.
text that we've done in the last 3 motions.
Okay. I'll second that. All those in favor?
I would just point out that GCO is evaluation of professional staff.
But ours is OI.
Never mind.
If they want to change it, I'm sure she'll make a suggestion
Okay.
before the full board. Mr. Frederickson.
I'm sorry, that document's also referenced on the other ones. Did you want to change the mnemonics on the other ones?
Yes, to be consistent throughout, yes,
It
that was a
says
good
you
catch.
reference 8214.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. It passes, and we have completed our list for the day. And we can get out early. Is there any more public comments that we have? Is there any suggestions for what we are doing next meeting?
Well,
You've got a whole list
I
that
have
you're...
I'll be making, I'll be sending something to our board meeting asking for a referral of several
Okay.
policies.
So then, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
6:06.
6:06. Thank you very much.